last thing the enemy wants is a whole bunch of people who know how to learn, discern, create, or facilitate an atmosphere that is conducive to what Jehovah wants to do in people's lives. So when you decide to become a true worshiper of the Lord, you are a threat to the enemy because you now are skillful enough to be able to move an atmosphere from being controlled by the enemy to being controlled by the Lord Jesus Christ, and he can begin to do what he wants to do in people's lives, and the enemy's hold is broken. This is why, does anybody remember King David? As he grew in worship, he worshiped God by himself in the fields. He eventually became to be armor bearer to Saul. And you remember the story? He would play and the demons that were tormenting Saul would just flee. I believe David said, aha. I believe that was an aha moment for him. I don't know if that had ever happened to him before. I don't know if he had ever experienced that before. He had just been worshiping God and loving God with his instrument and his worship, as he's going about his day, doing his thing. I don't know if he had ever experienced where what he did in worship actually affected the atmosphere. And so this is where we come back, where we talk about learning. You know the presence of God. You learn, you know how to be in his presence. You know how to worship him. You're familiar with him. This is why when you're in an atmosphere of worship and people don't know what to say, you can tell because that's not what they're normally used to. And people clap. Clapping is such a cop-out in worship. That means people ran out of something to say. They don't know what else to say. But I digress. But, David was worshiping God. I don't know that he ever knew that what he did in worship in his private time could affect an atmosphere like that, could really drive demons away. He may have known, he may have not. But in any case, he saw firsthand what he did in worship was able to free people and was able to change an atmosphere from a demonic atmosphere to one where the Spirit of the Lord prevailed. So everybody remembers that, right? But do you also remember once he became king, he began to set up, okay, wow, that worked so good. It was able to turn a demon-possessed man, be able to turn him around. You know what? We need to have 24/7 worship. We need to have that going on the whole time because I want Jehovah. I want the atmosphere to be controlled by Jehovah in my entire kingdom reign. That's what I would have did if I was in. If this worked with a demon-possessed king, changing the atmosphere with my worship with a demon-possessed king, what would happen if we had this going on 24/7? The enemy would not even be able to come in our midst. I believe that's what David's heart was. He loved God as well. But I believe he understood the power of worship and the power that worship has to keep an atmosphere under the control of Jehovah. And he said, you know what? Let's have that going on 24/7. Everybody take a shift. Everybody. And the Bible said in 2 Chronicles 25, the teacher as well as the student had a rotation. Even if you were just learning how to worship. You were just learning how to play an instrument. You need to get on shift. So I believe that David thought so highly of this. He knew how important an atmosphere of worship was, that he said, we need to have this going. I want this going on 24/7 in my realm. I want this atmosphere in this kingdom always controlled by Jehovah. Now, David had a lot of issues. So somebody might say, well, if he did all that, how come he has so many issues? If he had 24/7 worship going on, how did he have so many issues? If you have all that going on, the atmosphere is controlled by Jehovah. Well, how did he have so many issues? Number one, because he's still a human being. And number two, think what would happen if he didn't have that going on. Think what could have happened if he did not have 24/7 worship going on. Things would have been much worse. So thank God for what he did have going on. That probably stayed the hand of some demonic things and some things the enemy would have tried to bring against his kingdom had he not had the 24/7 worship going on. So it could have been much worse. So let's not knock him for, he still made some mistakes, but it could have been much worse if he did not have that worship going on.